Jim Walsh in Payson here at SuperTalk 1270, supertalk1270.com. All right, let me ask you about this. The president wants to, quote-unquote, privatize the air traffic control system. You're listening to his speech here in the background. Yeah. My question to you is, how safe would you feel flying with a system where the air traffic control was no longer under the government, but under private industry? I mention this because a lot of people are kind of wigged out about it, and I don't get it. I mean, to me, it actually, believe it or not, I never thought I'd hear myself saying this about anything that our current commander-in-chief was involved with, but it sounds to me like a pretty good deal, what he's proposing. I wouldn't have a problem with it. But I know a lot of people would. I've talked to people, some of my correspondents on Facebook. They just think it's a horrible thing. They have these apocalyptic images of planes just dropping out of the sky left and right. Well, I don't see it that way. I've read about the proposal. It doesn't bother me a bit. I don't think I'd have any trouble flying with the knowledge that this new system was in place. But a lot of people would. Would you feel safe enough flying given the system where the air traffic controllers the whole system was privatized? You mean working for evil capitalists? Ah! Now, here's the number, 663-1270. I would really like to get your take on this. I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about it. Because if what I saw on Facebook is any indication, there are a lot of folks who are kind of wigging out about this. And frankly, I don't get it. I don't see the problem. Yeah, I've heard all the arguments. And the thing is, though, you can talk about the economics of it all you want. You can talk about the politics of it all you want. And the thing is, it's still kind of a long shot. That's what they're telling me anyway. That's what the article says here. I got from the Washington Post. It says, yeah, it's a long shot. And it comes down to this. Basically, are people going to feel comfortable with the idea of flying under a system where the air traffic control is no longer part of the government, but is now in the hands of people like the major airlines? Because what they're proposing here, it's a private, quote-unquote, nonprofit system where there would be a board, a committee that would oversee things. And you have to assume, I think it's a rather safe assumption, that the major airline system, the major airlines, would be more than adequately represented in this so-called committee, this board of whatever. And, of course, my response to that is, how is that any different from the system we have now? You don't think that under the current system, a big airline has an disproportionate amount of influence on the way things are done? Sure they do. My question is, how's it going to be any different? But, again, forget about the politics of it all. Forget about the economics of it all. I want to hear it from your gut. Tell me if you think you would feel comfortable, or at least as comfortable as you do now, because, flying is not a pleasant experience for a lot of people. I'm not big on flying. It's something I don't do very often. And I love to travel, but I just don't like to fly. To me, it's a necessary evil anyway. But I don't think that this change in the system would affect me too much. I don't think I'd feel any better or really any worse about things than I already do. The idea of privatizing traffic control, it doesn't bother me, but a lot of people it does. On a gut level, is this something that bothers you? The number is 663-1270, 663-1270. I got a cousin who lives in New England. He's fairly much a by-the-book, left-wing kind of guy. And that's fine. I'm very liberal on a lot of issues, mostly the social issues. I'm also very conservative on a lot of issues, mostly the fiscal issues. Mostly, I'm about less government bureaucracy where possible and leave people the hell alone. I guess you would call me a small L libertarian. Leave my money alone, smoke all the weed you want, good luck with it. No, seriously. So I look at something like this, and I like to think that, we could probably pull it, and we would. We'd probably pull it off. I don't think there'd be a problem. There are arguments against it. I think there are better arguments for it. But it's all going to, in my opinion, it's all going to come down to this. Forget about the heavy-duty, politically wonky arguments for or against the air traffic control system and, putting it in the hands of private interests. Forget about the wonky arguments. Just tell me in your gut whether you feel comfortable with this idea. That's what I'm getting to here, and I would like very much to get your thoughts on this. Number is 663-1270, 663-1270. I encourage you very much to check in today. Give us your take on it. SuperTalk 1270, supertalk1270.com. More conversation coming up. Yeah, somebody trace that call. Tell the guy where he is, please. Now, we got into this. We're talking about the president, the guy with the orange thing there, and his proposal to overhaul or, let's use the P word, privatize the U.S. air traffic control system. And a lot of people are, of course, spinning these apocalyptic images of airplanes just dropping out of the sky like flies that just, flew into a room full of raid. Boom, 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 boom. Well, that's not going to happen. We know that. But on a gut level, here's my question to you. How comfortable do you personally feel with the idea of flying under a system where the air traffic controllers are no longer under the government, but under, quote unquote, private capitalist control? I'm amazed at the number of people who just on that gut visceral level are just really worked up over this. Are you among them? I'd like to hear your case. Number 663-1270. Don't get too wonky on me. I don't like to, this is not one of those shows where we like to get really heavily into the political philosophy behind things. I just want you to give me your initial gut feeling. Whatever hits you first about this, I say, they're going to privatize air traffic control. And a lot of people, they go, ah! Well, if you're one of those people, I want to hear from you. You tell me what's rolling around in your gut right now. I'd love to hear about it. The number here is 663-1270. 663-1270. I don't have a problem with it. I don't see the big deal. I don't see how it's any worse than what we've got now. In some ways, it could be better. It should be better. 663-1270. My name is Jim Walsh. I would love very much to hear from you on the subject. President Trump, in a speech yesterday, said he wanted to replace the current government-owned and operated air traffic control system with what he describes as a private, self-financing, nonprofit organization that would rely on user fees and not taxes to fund itself. Well, without getting heavily into the technical details of this, basically, the big advantage, what they're touting is the idea of efficiency. It would be a more efficient system than what they already have. And with a more efficient system, they could actually turn a profit with this, which they would then use as a nonprofit organization. They would take the money, not as profit, but they would invest it back into the system and update and fix some of the old, outmoded equipment. Apparently, if you talk to air traffic controllers, one of the big things a lot of them will complain about is that the equipment they work with isn't always up to grade. And this is a way of dealing with that problem, fixing that problem. And other countries have tried it, and it seems to be working. Canada is one of the countries. People talk about Canada being socialist. In many ways, Canada has a more market-oriented economy than we do, healthcare notwithstanding. Canada, England, Germany, among the 50 or so countries that have, to some extent, privatized air traffic control. And yes, I know we're not Canada, but the basic principle is there. I think at the very least, it's worth taking a serious look. As it is right now, it's kind of a long shot, but I think it's worth looking into. From what I've seen of it, I find more arguments, better arguments for it than against it. But what about you? Because what's going to really make or break this deal, I think, is what affects people on a gut level. You know, if you don't like the idea of getting on an airplane, and obviously if you have to fly, you have to fly. It's not necessarily something you have a lot of control over. If you have to fly somewhere, you're probably going to bite the bullet and fly, you know, whether the risk is increased or not. But how do you feel about that? That is the question. And that's what I want to address here. That's what I want you. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'm not a big fan of flying anyway, but I don't see how this, in my mind, would make things any worse. 663-1270 would love very much to get your input. You know, there's a friend of mine who's on the radio, Raleigh James, old friend of mine. She used to have a quasi-syndicated talk show. She used to fill in for, Art Bell periodically. And Raleigh used to say that, as good as the show is, it's even better when you call in and you weigh in. That's kind of what we're about here. 663-1270. How do you feel about the idea of this privatized air traffic system? To be sure, there are a lot of arguments against it. I don't think they hold water, but again, it doesn't matter. It's what people think in their gut. That's how they're going to respond to this, and that's how they're going to want people to vote on it. Anyway, we'll put that one on the table for you. A lot of fun things we could talk about. Did you see the story on the website? And we talked about it on the news this morning about this local guy. I have no idea who he is. No idea whatsoever. I really don't. I don't. But there's a local guy who apparently got on Craigslist. He was looking for some action. He was, as they say in the city, he was on the down low. He was a married man who was looking for some male-to-male companionship on the side. All right? You can look that one up in your Urban Dictionary online. But he was looking for this, and I swear to God, it's like that song, the Pina Colada song. Well, it didn't work out as well as it did in the song. Apparently, he was looking online for some action, and he came across an ad posted by his wife. God. The wife saying, I know what you're doing. I'm sick of it. I want a divorce. We have to talk. Isn't that the line that every husband or every man who's involved with a woman just hopes he never has to hear again in his life? I'm the same way. If I live to be 200, I hope I never have to hear those words again, that ominous phrase from a woman, my wife or whoever. We have to talk. Because you know it's not going to be good. It's not like, honey, we have to talk. We just won the Powerball. It never works out that way, does it? No, it's always something negative. And in any event, I don't get the appeal of things like Craigslist anyway. I don't see why it's necessary, but maybe it's just, some people think it should be outlawed. I don't agree with that. Of course, on Craigslist, there's a lot of stuff on there other than the sex stuff. There's a lot of people looking for jobs and looking for errands, looking for assistance and things, and that's cool. But the sex stuff doesn't bother me either. I just don't get the need for it. And we'll talk about that in just a minute here as well. Do you see a need for something like Craigslist in your life? Really? Some people think it should be banned. I don't agree, but we can talk about it. 663-1270. Love to hear from you here at SuperTalk 1270, supertalk1270.com. More conversation coming up. Oh, what can I say? We've been talking about airline safety, and I just got this sudden urge to play a Buddy Holly song. Go figure. course, you know they were on their way to Fargo the night that, yeah. Oh, boy. Not exactly a good karma thing to associate with the great city of Fargo, but there you go. This is actually the Marshall Crenshaw version that was used in the movie La Bamba. Oh, I love it. I love this. Yeah. SuperTalk 1270, supertalk1270.com. So how do you feel about the idea of privatizing air traffic control? Forget about all the wonky political stuff. How does it strike you on a gut level? You're going to feel safer flying with a system where the guys, you're putting your life in their hands, these air traffic controllers, and they're no longer going to be paid by the government. They're going to be paid by capitalists. The C word. Oh, yeah, the P word, privatize. The big business, big airlines are going to be footing the bill for all this. Well, my question is, really, how is it? Is it really radically any different from what we have now? I don't see the problem. I really don't. Number 663-1270. 663-1270. That's what we're looking for is your gut feeling on this. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270 and supertalk1270.com. Also, about the Craigslist thing. We talked about we had a news story this morning, and it's on the website, supertalk1270.com. You can check it out there as well. There's somebody saw this on Craigslist right here. It happened right here in Bismarck. Some guy apparently is trolling Craigslist for some, shall we say, male companionship. And the guy's married, so he's on what they call the down low. He's slipping around on his wife with men, okay? And forget about how you feel about that for a moment. Here's the weird thing. He actually came across an ad, and it was from his wife. She said, I know what you're doing. I don't like it. I want a divorce. We have to talk. That's actually, the we have to talk, that's actually worse than just saying I want a divorce. Don't you agree? I want a divorce. Oh, she says, I want a divorce. Okay, well, that's over. The shoe is dropped. We can deal with this. But if she says, we have to talk, then you're going to anticipate all the horrible, god-awful things that she possibly want to talk about. Because when a woman says to you, we have to talk, it's never good, is it? It's never, honey, we have to talk. I got a big raise at work. Yay! We have to talk. We're having grandchildren. Yay! Yeah, it's always, we have to talk. And then she lowers the boom. So it's never good. But I don't get the appeal of Craigslist anyway. I don't think it should be banned. That's silly. I mean, people want to do this stuff. That's their business. But I just don't get the appeal of Craigslist. Here's the way I look at it. Now, here's a lesson for all you single guys. Because I used to be a single guy. I used to be happy. Now I'm married. Just kidding. Just kidding. I hope my wife is not listening. I never knew what marriage was, and I never knew what happiness was till I got married. Then it was too late. Thank you. Be here all week. Try the shrimp scampi. It's delicious. See us next week at the Copacabana. All right. My wife is going to kill me. I'm going to get home and she's going to say, we have to talk. I heard your show today. Oh, boy. But seriously, I don't get the appeal of Craigslist. I don't understand why you would need it. You single guys, you don't need it. Because here's the thing. Whatever you want to do in the sack, we're not going to get graphic here, but you know what I'm talking about. No matter how offbeat or off-kilter it may be, assuming you're not doing something really, really weird, like, I don't know, cutting people's heads off or whatever. Assuming you're not doing something really super weird like that. My experience has always been, when I was a single man, that if you find the right woman or partner and you establish a rapport with them and you get to the point where you're getting intimate, generally you will find that she's going to be a lot more receptive to whatever you want once you establish that trust and that mutual relationship. Well, that being the case, what do you need Craigslist for? You know, if you got issues talking to women, there's a lot better ways to deal with this than using a stupid website. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that because I actually met my wife through Yahoo Personals. Yeah, I know, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. In my case, it worked out. But the thing is, I did my homework. I didn't go into it with both eyes closed. It wasn't an eyes wide shut kind of situation. I at least did my homework and checked everything out before I jumped in with both feet. You know, I met her and we got along and, we just took it step by step. And that was like 14 some years ago. And now I'm married to the lady, and it's great. So, okay, I can understand it, I guess, if you're looking for women to date or get to know, if like you're new to town, as I was at the time. But for all the weird and goofy stuff, you really don't need it. Because, again, I'm basing this on my own past experience. Once you get into that relationship and you get a rapport going, you're not really going to have any trouble. If you want to do things a little off kilter, as long as it's not super weird, you're going to be fine. Generally, women or partners, whoever, generally, they are a lot more open to that kind of thing than you probably think. You're thinking, oh, I'm going to tell her I want to rub cream cheese on her elbows and lick it off, and she's going to think I'm perverted. Well, not necessarily. Like I say, once you get to know somebody, then, tell them what you want. And chances are, they might say no, but there's a pretty good chance they're also going to say yes. All right, let's leave it at that here. That's Craigslist for you. Again, number here, 663-1270. Can you ever see yourself using a service like Craigslist? Well, what should be done with Craigslist? There are people I've actually met who think it should be banned. It encourages immoral behavior. Like, what's the other one? The Ashley Madison, where it's specifically designed for people who want to, cheat on their spouses. No, I wouldn't ban that either. If you want to cheat on your spouse, go ahead. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're the one with the problem. And if somebody else wants to make money for, you having your issues, I'm okay with that. That's not their fault. It's your fault. You're the one who's got to work on your issues, not them. I'm really okay with that. Talking about these weird websites. Craigslist, which is a lot more than just sex or relationships. Of course, and Ashley Madison, which is strictly about adultery. Some people say, well, it encourages adultery. We shouldn't allow that in our society. No, come on. Come on. You really think not allowing a website for people to hook up and shack up, you really think that's not allowing a website is going to stop people from doing that? Come on. Yeah, some guy wants to make money off you and your personal issues. The fact that you can't get your act together and somebody wants to exploit that, well, hey, baby, that's the American way. I'm okay with that. It's not their fault. You're the one with the problem. 663-1270. Oh, what else we got here? Wonder Woman debuted over the weekend. I was always a big fan of Wonder Woman. Even though she's a woman, I always liked the idea of a female superhero, a strong woman. Of course, I was raised by strong women. My mother was a strong woman. I was I was a rarity in my generation because both my parents worked at a time when in a lot of social circles, that was not considered socially acceptable. But my parents didn't care. For one thing, it was kind of an economic necessity. My father was a bricklayer, made a decent living. My mother was a nurse. She made a decent living. Between the two of them, we did okay. We were never rich. We had our periods of tight money, but we got through it okay, mainly because both parents were working. Never had a problem. So I personally never had a problem with that. My wife works. I work. I'm good with that. I would feel weird in a relation where my wife didn't work. So I've never had a problem being around strong women. I like strong women. My mother was a strong woman. My aunts were all strong women. Half my family was from the South. The other half were Roman Catholic, Irish Catholic. Now, you talk about have strong women coming at you from both directions. Well, there you go. And, of course, all my dad, my uncles, they were all strong men because you got to be a strong man to deal with a strong woman. I'm okay with that. I've never had a problem with that. Now, you guys who think you got to get these dainty little flowers who are just going to wilt away if you breathe on them too hard, you're missing out. You really need a strong person in your life. If you're a strong person, you should have a strong person. It'll make you a better person, really. So Wonder Woman, it's kind of silly, though, because people are complaining because Wonder Woman is not American enough. And from the other side, you got people saying that Wonder Woman shouldn't be Caucasian. Well, she always was in the comic books. I don't think the people who really buy the comic books and see the movies, do you really care what color the woman is one way or the other? I don't. It's like Lenny Bruce said. You got a choice between, if you're a white middle-aged man, you got a choice between a black woman and a white woman. Which one you going to choose? Well, before you answer, I'll tell you the black woman is Halle Berry. The white woman is Roseanne Barr. All of a sudden, the pigmentation is not so big a deal, is it? Right. Well, it's the same way with Wonder Woman. A Wonder Woman of color? Sure, why not? My answer is always the same. It depends on the woman you're talking about. Halle Berry? Sure. Nell Carter? Not so much. So. I'm going to be wrapping up in a couple of minutes here at SuperTalk 1270, supertalk1270.com, Bis-Man Weekly. I'm Jim Walsh. More conversation coming up.
Currently 70 degrees.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons on SuperTalk 1270.
Your mama.
Puppy monkey baby.
Your mama.
My mama?
That's right, I said your mama.
Oh. Well, Mother's Day was last month, though. Oh, okay. If you're going to be that way about it. You really feel strongly about it. Okay, obviously you feel pretty strongly about this, so never mind.
That's right, I said your mama.
Your mama, son.
Your mama.
On a more serious note, today, the anniversary of the D-Day invasion. I love history. Let's talk history for a couple of minutes here, because I'm a big history buff. Maybe I should have majored in history, but, you know, I don't know. When it came to going back to school a few years ago, by the way, the SuperTalk 1270, supertalk1270.com, and I'm Jim Walsh, and you obviously know who you are. A few years ago, when I decided to go back to school and finish my degree and get a master's degree and all that stuff, I was thinking, oh, what should I major? And I made the choice to build on the skills that I already have in the world of business, business management, marketing, and so on. I got a bachelor's in marketing, and I got a master's degree in business. Business management, actually, not an MBA. It's kind of a little bit different, more of the people skills involved. But I got this because, again, I figured I've got this set of skills based on my years doing radio and radio programming, and I dipped my toe in radio management at one point, and I figured, well, I should probably, it's more realistic at my advanced age to build on the skills that I already have rather than completely starting over from scratch. Now, the reason I mention this is one alternative I looked at was majoring in something like history. I'm a history freak. I love history. If I had majored in history, I know I just would have breezed right through it in school and probably in grad school as well. My thought at the time was, well, you know, what are your options with a history degree? How many doors will it really open for you? You know, I was already in the radio broadcasting and journalism business. That's one place where I suppose it will be useful. Cronkite had a history degree. But aside from maybe teaching history on a college level, or, you know, writing history books, I was looking for something a little more pragmatic than that. I figure, well, those are things I can do on the side. Nonetheless, I'm a big history fan, and when something like the D-Day anniversary comes up, I'm just fascinated by the stories. I'm going to give you just one story here. This is my all-time favorite D-Day story. Happened as they were the Allies, the European theater of operations under General Eisenhower. They were getting ready for the big invasion where the Allies were going to cross the English Channel and land in France at Normandy. and they were going to get a foothold on mainland Europe and move on to crush the Nazis, with us coming from one side and the Soviets coming from the other. And, of course, you know what happened. Hitler killed himself in the bunker, and that was the end of that. Then we had a whole different set of issues to deal with the Russians. But that's another chapter of history. But my favorite all-time story involving D-Day has to do with Eisenhower, Winston Churchill, and the King of England. By the way, if you see that movie, The King's Speech, it's about when the new king came in after the other one abdicated to run off with the American woman, Wallis Simpson. It's a great movie. But that's the King of England we're talking about here. The story is, as they were getting ready for the D-Day invasion, Winston Churchill, who was a pretty odd duck himself, great man in a lot of ways, but his way of thinking was a little, you know what I mean? Winston Churchill got it in his head that he was going to ride along on the D-Day invasion. Now, you've heard the stories about what happened when they hit that beach, right? Well, everybody had a pretty good idea it was going to be like that going in. And the one thing they didn't want was a guy like Churchill, A, putting himself in danger, and B, just kind of getting in everybody's way. But nobody could talk Churchill out of this idea that he had to be in on the invasion. He had to be there personally, and he had to somehow take part in it. So finally, Eisenhower, I don't think it was Ike himself, I think one of Ike's assistants finally called on the one person who could pull rank on Churchill, the King of England. And they told the king what the deal was. They said, Winston wants to go on the invasion. We don't want him to go, obviously. Can you recommend what we do? And the king, he was very, very stately, very courtly, apparently a very nice man. He said, look, I know how Winston is. I've dealt with Winston before. He said, look, you fellas, you chaps, you just do your jobs. You just do what you have to do to get ready for the invasion. And don't worry. You leave Winston to me. Now, what happened was, about a day later, the king placed a call to Winston. It's a great story. The way he handled it, he said, Winston, I think it's a wonderful idea that you're going on the invasion. In fact, I'm thinking if you go on the invasion, I should go with you. Yeah, that was the end of Churchill going on the D-Day invasion. I love that story. It's just, history is, if you dig, history is just full of those great stories. Yeah, today, the D-Day invasion, I think of my dad, who was not in D-Day. He was in the Pacific Theater at the time on the Ticonderoga. He was a gunner's mate on one of the big aircraft carriers that came online later in the war, the Big T, the Ticonderoga. And the best story he told me a lot of great stories, but, the story when they were getting ready for the invasion, because the invasion was supposed to come in, the fall of 45, and it got up to about first week of August, and they were on maneuvers just off the Japanese islands, getting ready for the invasion of the home islands. And they got a message all of a sudden saying, get the hell out of there. Just get as far from Japan. Just sail out to sea. Just turn the boat eastward and get as far away from Japan as you can. Get the hell out of there. And they did. And it was about 2 days later that they found out why. It was Hiroshima. And as my dad tells the story, he was showing up to get ready for a day's work one day, and one of his buddies said, "You hear about that bomb they dropped?" And my dad's first question was, "What bomb? Who dropped it?" "We dropped it. Big bomb dropped. Single bomb wiped out a whole city, and the war's going to be over." And that also reminds me, right near the end of the war, he told me the story about how the supply lines got a little short, so they couldn't get their regular food, so they had this stuff coming from Australia. He said it was called bully beef. God knows what it really was. It was in a can. It was canned meat. Say no more, right? Australian bully beef was what it was called. It could have been kangaroo meat. God knows what it really was, but he said it was terrible. It was even worse than the powdered eggs. But he said this stuff is so bad, they actually caught some of the guys breaking into the lifeboats to steal the Spam out of the emergency rescue kits in the lifeboats. Great story. The Spam was vastly preferable to the bully beef. Pork shoulder and ham, you got to love it. Personally, I've always preferred Treat, the Armor Star version. I don't know why. My grandmother used to make Treat. She didn't like Spam. She made Treat. And maybe it's a personal association with that. Nostalgia. One more quick story at the end of the war. It's funny how many interesting stories come from the end of the war, where they got the announcement that the truce had been declared and the Japanese were getting ready to sign the surrender papers. So the announcement came one morning. Now hear this. The Japanese have agreed to a truce. The surrender will be signed next week. In the meantime, if you see any Japanese Zeros in the area, you will please shoot them down in a friendly manner. Exactly. I love that. Thinking of my daddy. With Father's Day coming. Hey, Father's Day's coming up. That's a great thing to think about. Think about this for Father's Day. What's the best advice your dad ever gave you? In my case, it was the exact same advice Billy Joel gave me when I met him. He said, "Don't take no crap from nobody." And he didn't say crap either. But I always loved that about him. He was a very straightforward guy. And my dad's still around. He's turning 92 this year. And if at all possible, I'm going to try to get home to see him sometime this summer. We'll see how that works out. So happy birthday, Pops. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, winding up here. Your comments welcome about anything you may have heard in the last hour. Get on the website at supertalk1270.com. Your comments always welcomed and appreciated. Until next time, this is Jim Walsh saying, until next time, so long until next time. Tune in again for more of the same old shoot 'em up and the same old rodeo. I'm out of here.